We have to look at all the factors together. I do not think that this is the time to start playing the blame game and for people to start pointing fingers at those who they think are their lessers for having voted in a way that they didn't want them to vote, and now see this as an opportunity to say, I told you so, because actually, frankly, they would be wrong. There is a global labour shortage. That's just a fact. And as I've just read out for you, there is specifically a global truck driver shortage, not just in Britain, where we're short 100,000 truck drivers, HGV drivers, that figure, as reported by the Times today. But as I mentioned to you in the FT, Europe is short of 400,000 drivers, and the US also is short of lorry drivers. So not only is there a global labour shortage, there is also specifically a global lorry driver shortage. In addition to the labour shortages that are triggering this crisis, of course, Brexit has a role to play because of free movement that has been suspended, of course, due to Brexit has been terminated, and the added bureaucracy then required to get into the country. So it's not right to deny that Brexit plays a role, but it's also not right to pretend that that's the only cause. It's a partial reason, but then it's not as simple as that. The truck driver shortage in the UK has been ongoing for around 15 years, and any drivers that the Prime Minister has now said 5,000 can come in from abroad, do keep in mind that that's only for 6 months, and it still isn't a long-term solution, because what we really need is to retrain our domestic labour force so that they can fill the gap of the 100,000 that are short, the gap in this market, and that can have a stabilising effect on domestic wages. The temporary permission for 5,000 lorry drivers to come from abroad needs to remain temporary, otherwise it will not, in the long run, have the stabilising effect on wages that we require domestically. So there is, of course, Brexit plays a role. There's also IR35 tax changes that play a role in the shortage of lorry drivers, and changes to licences, poor working conditions that have been building up for about 15 years due to the cheapness of the labour force and people not wanting, as a result, to do that job, low wages, not attracting workers, and, importantly, furlough, the scheme that comes to an end in a week. Furlough still has 600,000 people on furlough. There's 100,000 shortage of lorry drivers. 600,000 people are on furlough. And they could be, some of them, not all of them, of course, retrained if they so required. There is also 1 million jobs going in this country that need filling. So if you look at the situation, you realise that what built up to this is a long history of neglect of the sector, and then as it gets closer to the current day, of course, Brexit and the extra effects of that, and then, of course, lockdown and furlough, and the consequence of paying people not to work, all leading up to a situation where the economy shut down because of lockdown. Gas wasn't being stored, and we end up with, as a result, gas prices rising wholesale to 250% increase, 4% inflation. All of these factors have come together because of a series of causes that have come almost in a perfect storm, come together at this time. So when understanding what's causing the problem, it's important to be multifaceted, because then otherwise, if you're just going to play the blame game and play politics with this, you won't be able to arrive at a solution. And when you look at Brexit as a particular cause, of course, that part of it isn't going to be reversed. So what we need to be able to do is look at the factors that are in our control, such as the domestic labour shortage and the 600k on furlough, how to make sure that some of those 600,000 on furlough, when it ends, can fill the 100,000 shortage of lorry drivers. How to smooth the licence changes, how to smoothen the IR35 changes, how to improve working conditions for HGV lorry drivers, and how to retrain as fast as possible. And then in addition to that, of course, let's not forget Insulate Britain blocking the M25, which, though not a major factor, has also contributed, at least in London, to delivery shortages as well. So those are the multifaceted problems. Now, what the Prime Minister has done is lose control. So despite me saying it's unfair to only blame Brexit, which frankly it is, it's just unfair, and it's actually playing politics and playing a game with the nation. And I don't like people playing games, because the people that suffer when people play games are those that need your help the most. So let's stop playing games and understand it's a multifaceted problem. But let's at least, yes, acknowledge that the Prime Minister's lost control of that multifaceted problem. And the PM needs to stop underestimating, because of his constant apparent upbeat and optimistic outlook, he has a tendency to underestimate the extent of the problem in the country and the extent of people suffering, and just how quickly this could snowball out of control. And if he does need some examples, just look to the year 2000, when, as an exception for Tony Blair, he suddenly lost his lead in the opinion polls because of a fuel blockade and a consequent panic buying in supermarkets. It can happen very quickly. And Tony Blair was a Prime Minister that very rarely lost his lead in the polls, and indeed didn't lose an election every time he ran it for the 3 consecutive general elections, and yet it nearly happened to him too in the year 2000. Boris Johnson needs to stop underestimating the extent of this problem and really act fast before he loses control of the situation. The last thing I'll say is, as I've been saying for a while on this show, we are probably in for a difficult winter. What with the combination of all of these problems coming together, conflating together at the same time, with the surging gas prices, 250% increase in wholesale prices, the closure of small energy providers, rising household bills as a result, the recent CO2 shortages, which has led to disruption of fertiliser, food supplies, lorry driver shortages, leading to rationing in petrol stations, 4% inflation, COVID still around, hanging around like a bad flu, forgive the pun, and indeed a difficult flu season because of lockdown. We are probably in for a difficult winter ahead. We must resist turning on each other, pointing the finger at each other. We must resist becoming divided because of this. The only way we get through this is by getting through it together.